Half-Life, the game that influenced the gaming industry so much that there are still people in hopes of a Half-Life 3. Sorry, since Valve can't count to 3, that's just never gonna happen. I have the sneaking suspicion that what I just said is going to bite me in the ass at some point. Although with the relatively recent release of Half-Life Alyx, as in 1 year ago, there is actual hope that Valve will continue the Half-Life series. Today, however, I will take a look back to a much simpler time. A time where Doom and Quake ruled the first-person shooter genre. A time where baby Gmod DW wasn't even born, so I can't even relate to any of this. This was actually the reason I had for making this review, which was I didn't get to experience Half-Life when it was initially released. I didn't even play Half-Life until I bought it in the Valve Complete Bundle during the Winter 2019 sale. That's why I'm going to give you some of my initial thoughts on the game, and also some of my opinions on the game now that I've played it through 10 times. Enough with this foolish background stuff. Onto the game stuff. Well, it's my 4-year channel anniversary. Yes, the first video I uploaded was 4 years ago today, December 22nd. And what better game to celebrate than Half-Life? So let's get into this right now. Experiencing Half-Life for the first time in 2019 was really interesting, since at the time, I didn't realize the true significance of this game. I hadn't even played through a single Half-Life game before, the closest being Gary's mod. I was really surprised picking up the game for the first time at just how much fun I was having. Running and shooting at monsters, the immersive gameplay and the story had me hooked throughout the entirety of the game. Originally I was playing with the HD model pack until someone pointed out on a stream that I was using them, and I haven't turned them back on since. The HD models look okay. They were initially released for Blue Shift. I'll get into that in another video. I don't really like playing with the HD models. They're not bad or anything, it's just I would rather play with the original model pack. But enough about the HD model pack, and talk more about the engaging story and gameplay. You are Gordon Freeman, an MIT graduate who works at the Black Mesa Research Facility located in the desert of New Mexico. During another day at work, you accidentally cause a resonance cascade which allows aliens from the border world, Zen, to come through to Earth. Surviving the initial catastrophe, you're going to have to fight your way out of the Black Mesa facility in order to survive. Your mission is initially to reach the surface, but I'll touch more on that later. For story originality, Half-Life gets no points. Even though the story is not the most original story of all, the way the story is told to the player makes the game so much more interesting. The first-person perspective is maintained throughout the entire campaign, only being taken out once or twice. This is why I describe Gordon Freeman's actions as being a you action, since Gordon Freeman is just a character who the player projects themselves onto in this game. With the goal of survival in mind and the surface within reach, what is stopping you? The countless alien enemies that came through the portal to Earth. Headcrabs zombies, bull squids, barnacles, vortigons, hound eyes, ichthyosaurs, gargantuas, peckbeasts, alien grunts, alien controllers, and the big bad himself, the Nihilanth. However, we'll get to him when we get to Zen. You are helped out by the Black Mesa staff, which includes the scientists and the security guards. There's also the mysterious G-Man, but we'll be back to him later. The military is called in to handle the situation at Black Mesa. You encounter your first military guards in the chapter, We've Got Hostiles. The grunt runs up and shoots the scientist standing at the bottom of the stairs. The mission is not actually to rescue the Black Mesa staff, but to kill the staff to cover up the incident. These enemies make up a majority of the middle part of the game. The weapons also add to the gameplay, so it's a progression of getting the weaker pistol at the start, to slowly working up to the more powerful weapons, and some weapons are just plain weird. The crowbar, pistol, magnum, submachine gun, shotgun, crowbar, grenades, satchel charges, trip mines, rocket launcher, Gauss cannon, hive hand, snark, and gluon gun are all the weapons acquired in Half-Life. The weapons are one of the most important parts of any game because they open up different ways to kill the enemies. Tricking grunts in Half-Life to giving up their cover to avoid a grenade you've thrown, using the gluon gun to rip and tear through groups of alien grunts. The weapons give the game a lot of variety and flexibility in different types of playstyles. The enemies also give part in this as well. Good grammar on my part. My old English teacher would be very disappointed in me right now. Anyways, the combat in Half-Life is very important since it varied depending on how you decided to play the game. You can just use the submachine, shotgun, and magnum for the entire game, but using the other weapons and trying to use different combinations is more fun, and it's going to be important if you're playing on hard. The weapons have a lot of ammo as well, which is good since there are a lot of enemies to deal with in Half-Life. It's not like the ammo capacity in Half-Life 2, which is bollocks and abysmal. This will be by far my biggest criticism of Half-Life 2. In Half-Life, you're running and jumping through all the obstacles. By far my favorite playstyle is the frantic playstyle. Constantly switching weapons and bee-hopping around is my favorite way to play. The game, I should probably get back to talking about that. After going through more of Black Mesa and avoiding lots of soldiers, you will encounter the Peck Beast, a group of 3 large tentacles that will own your sorry ass if you ever think about going near them. Your objective is to turn on the rocket, and to do that, you have to go around and hit switches through doors guarded by the Peck Beast. Toss grenades to distract it, and don't make as much noise as a walking speed. However, the thing seems to be partially deaf since I can walk really fast and it doesn't attack me. Sometimes, maybe it's random. After killing the stupid thing, you are greeted with the next of Half-Life's tricks, the new player trap. The one specifically being the falling pipe trap, specifically designed to catch players off guard. After that is Power Up, where you meet the Gargantua. If you save grenades, you can just kill it with explosives or kill it using the generator. However, you have to start up the generator, which makes this level very similar to Blast Pit, except there are more AGCU grunts. Actually, there weren't any AGCU grunts in Blast Pit, so this one definitely has more. Fuck off, game. The hit scan makes them bullshit hard sometimes. I think the grunts are the hardest enemies in Half-Life, and the 2 reasons why are that 1, they have hit scan weapons, and B, they're really tanky on hard, mainly coming in large numbers. Now I'm going to talk about the individual chapters of Half-Life and what makes them different from one another. But first, I need to talk about the hazard course. The Half-Life hazard course is overall a pretty poor introduction to Half-Life. I like it since I mainly don't ever have to play it again. However, for the purposes of this video, I did. It's definitely not a good introduction to Half-Life, as I said. It's not even a good tutorial in general. Same with the opposing force tutorial, however the OF one is cheesy and actually entertaining to play through. The best part of the hazard course is the part where you can kill everyone, since they don't take your weapons away.
Ophelia. Show yourself.
Trust me, that last clip was necessary. So I've heard that the tram ride was really cool and awesome back in 1998, which sounds very true. For a first-person shooter game to show restraint to get into the action is quite remarkable. When people say Half-Life revolutionized FPS games, this is the first example of that. Although I know the legacy of the tram ride, I never usually play it. I have a save file that takes me right to the point where Barney opens up the door. For this video, I did go through the entire tram ride. However, I wanted to see what would happen if I stood still on the tram, and all that happened was my cursor kept getting more and more off-center after every single loading screen. There's lots to see on the tram ride, even showing part of what will be the opening of Blue Shift where Barney's stuck outside. We'll get to that expansion in a later video. So Barney lets Gordon into the anomalous materials lab, and then... well, anomalous materials is a pretty good introduction into the Black Mesa facility itself. While the tram ride gives more mystery to the facility, anomalous materials gives the player their first glimpses of what actually goes on inside one part of the facility. Apparently, Gordon is very late for work, so suit up and get down to the test chamber. Also in anomalous materials, you can see the G-Man starting to pull the strings. Find out more about him later. Alright, so nothing can possibly go wrong. Before I actually fuck up everything, just kidding, mass resonance cascade, get teleported around. However, I usually skip that part by going up on this light fixture. Awesome stuff right there. Well, I guess nobody saw this one coming. So, the resonance cascade has pretty much wiped out the entire Black Mesa facility. Everything has gone to shit. Explosions, monsters, and worst of all, elevators that kill. Look, Gordon, the crowbar. I think the crowbar is quite good at box breaking and dealing with head crabs. Any other enemy and you probably are dead, especially on hard. Lots of enemies in Half-Life are much more difficult on hard. It's great to see how the Black Mesa facility is devastated. What's even better is that the devastation is shown to the player and not shown through cutscenes or text on the screen. The unbroken first-person narrative is another example in Half-Life revolutionized FPS games. For me at least, indirect characterization is way more interesting, rather than using direct characterization. Show, don't tell. The game gives me those grenades, and I decided to test them out on this scientist. Also, I always skip this lift with the spawning head crabs. Oh, well that doesn't usually happen. After that, you get to see the bull squid that's fighting head crabs. I think that this box parkour after that part is pretty easy since most of the boxes you can just drop down onto. However, now it's time to move on to... wait, what? Okay, so we're finally onto the chapter Office Complex. Office Complex is a chapter where traveling through vents becomes the new normal. I swear, whenever I think of vents in Half-Life, I think of Office Complex. Office Complex is a good chapter. It helps introduce the Vortigons for real and implement them as a force to be reckoned with. Nah, they're pretty easy. On normal, their fire rate of the lightning attack is really slow, and on hard it's still pretty easy to get out of the way. They go down in 2 hits with the shotgun or some pistol blasts. I feel that Office Complex is really, really easy, although that is the point. However, the next chapter will not be so forgiving. It's time to introduce... oh yes, it's time to roll in the troops. The Marines have finally arrived at Black Mesa. I talked about the Marines and hit scan weapons earlier, so I won't rehash what I already said. This chapter isn't really that hard for me, since I can easily get through a group of Marines while taking 0 damage. Although I also had many other times in the future where I either die or make it by the Marines by the skin of my teeth. Throughout this playthrough of Half-Life, I tried not to quick save that much, and I did a really good job of that up until a certain chapter. I'll get much more into that later. The Marines are here and they will be showing up for the rest of the game. In this chapter they aren't that bad to fight, but don't expect that from any other chapter. Well, other than this chapter, since the Marines don't show up in Blast Pit. In Blast Pit, your goal is to make barbecue out of the triple tentacle monster, the Peck Beast. Gordon has to turn on the generator and also turn on these two pumps. Anyways, after doing all of that, the tentacle monster gets absolutely destroyed. Blast Pit is the chapter where there's a big monster that you need to destroy, which is cool. However, this also makes the next chapter a little bit odd in its placement. Power Up. The reason is that the big monster blocking your path, which you need to destroy, is also the main purpose of Power Up. In this case, it's the Gargantua, which is blocking the generator. The only difference is that the Gargantua can be killed with explosives. On normal mode, you can actually kill it if you have all 10 of your grenades. The difference between Power Up and Blast Pit is that in Power Up, the Marines are back in full force. This time they're coming in droves. There are lots of Marines in this area, and on hard, you might need to use some creative tactics to get by. In normal mode, I talked about earlier the shotgun, magnum, and machine gun combo, and you can use this for most of that mode. However, on hard, this is not as good of an option, especially in later chapters. Using more weapons like snarks and other oddities like the hive hand might be your only option. For right now though, the shotgun and machine gun will suffice. After reactivating the power, a group of Marines comes down to kill you. Let's turn these human bastards into red paste. After that, it's time to do the same to the Gargantua. Oh look, a rail car. I hope this doesn't have a role to play in the next... Fuck! On a Rail is not a good chapter. You're always on this dumb rail car, and what is your primary objective?
Freeman, I've been waiting for you. One of your scientist pals said to give you a message. You're supposed to take this old rail system up to some kind of satellite delivery rocket. I don't know where it is exactly, and the old guy was so worried about getting out of here alive, he didn't tell me. Main thing is, the military aborted the launch, so when you do find the rocket, you'll have to get up to the control room and launch it yourself. He said something about a Lambda team needing the satellite in orbit if they were ever going to clean up this mess.
Of course, to launch a rocket. This chapter consists of mostly Marines, and of course, driving the rail car. It's just so slow and takes way too long. Usually I skip most of this first part by using the trip mines, like this. However, this time I'll go through this section for real. Oh, who you son of a... To sum up on a rail would be rails and Marines. This chapter has the best fake out in the game. It starts out with the player being on the rail car and then the rail car crashing into the water. And then a new enemy is introduced. The Ichthyosaur. You get the crossbow now and get to fight the Ichthyosaur, which takes me way too many tries. Okay, well now I get to move on from that. I get to go through this cold area where there are Vortigaunts firing lightning at me. Then it is finally time to introduce the new enemy, the female assassins. I usually try to deal with them by shooting them with the SMG grenade launcher. On hard, these assassins go partially invisible, which makes them a little bit harder. Honestly, they're not that interesting, but then...
Nice hit. Alright, we got him.
Where are we taking this Freeman guy? Topside for questioning. What the hell for? We got him. Let's kill him now. And if they find the body? Body? What body?
So Gordon gets thrown in the trash compactor, which are actually like the rail cars. Interesting fun fact. So that means that it's time for residue processing. This chapter is really, really bad. Gordon is traveling through the sewage system, otherwise known as Black Mesa's residue processing. It's funny. You only get the crowbar and the pistol in this chapter, so naturally there aren't that many enemies. This makes residue processing one of the most boring chapters in terms of enemy encounters. However, there's this one conveyor belt loop of death is the worst part. Fortunately, this leads me into... Questionable Ethics, the chapter where Gordon finds out that the scientists have been experimenting on the aliens for longer than what was initially said. The military shows up again, and at first I barely have any ammo to deal with them. It's at this point where the game can get really hard. Your weapons were taken away before the last chapter, so this is the first time I get any proper guns. And then the Tau can is introduced in the best way it possibly could be.
What is this thing? Some kind of weapon? Put that down. It's a prototype. Man, why are you using it? It's much too unpredictable. Don't let it overcharge. What do you mean, overcharge?
After going through this death machine and getting a scientist to let you out, it's time to move on to... Surface tension. This is the absolute hardest chapter in Half-Life that's still honestly fair. I'm looking at you, interloper. This chapter's one big shooting range, and you are the target. The entire military and alien military are out to get you. Well, they are too busy fighting each other, that is. There are so many memorable moments in this chapter. The minefield, the cliffside, the warehouse, the part where you kill a tank with a crowbar. Wait, what? The part where Gordon wrecks a million Vortigaunts, the part with the Snarks, the part with the Gargantua. Oh my god, this chapter goes on forever. Seriously, this chapter goes on and on and on. However, this is not a complaint. This is by far my favorite chapter in Half-Life, even though it is long and also very hard. There are many fun set pieces and lots of Marines and aliens to kill. This chapter is one that cements Gordon as a badass, in my opinion. This chapter makes me at least feel like I'm being ground into the dirt, and once I survive, I feel so very accomplished. Forget about Freeman as the next chapter. It's not as good as Surface Tension. Gordon goes underground and has to face more military and more aliens in his quest to reach the Lambda Lab. This chapter introduces these snark bombs that only show up in this chapter. These bombs release a bunch of snarks to try to fuck up Gordon. Other than that, this chapter is just more of the same. Run, think, shoot, live. Lambda Core. This chapter is an extension of the last two until Gordon reaches the last entrance to the Lambda Labs. However, first he must fight more of those female assassins who are back with a vengeance. The player gets the glue-on gun before entering the labs, which is probably the best gun in the entire game. It just tears through most enemies with ease. The Lambda Complex is a brutal place if not prepared. There's some death rays that can kill you if not prepared, and also many tough platforming puzzles. After making it to the end of the complex, Gordon is greeted by his fellow colleagues, who tell him that a single powerful being is not allowing the portals to be closed. You gear up, and now it is time to go to Zen. However, first you must keep this scientist alive. I didn't actually know this scientist could die, since I usually play on normal. However, my friend actually did have this guy die when he was playing through this on normal, so apparently he can. The hard part about keeping him alive is that a bunch of alien controllers spawn in and keep shooting at him. Dispatch them quickly, either with the Tau Cannon, Magnum, or the crossbow if you can aim that thing properly. Then, it's off to Zen. Oh, dear Lord.
Freeman, you fool!
Fuck Zen. However, this chapter's okay. The sudden gravity change is very jarring. However, this chapter is so short. This chapter is so short, it makes You Have 10 Seconds feel like an eternity. I might have to do a video on those games now. Anyways, you let free a bunch of these pixelated things, and then these open up a portal to... Gonarch's Lair. This is one long boss level. This is the best that Zen has to offer, a giant testicle monster. In all seriousness, this chapter is not that bad. It doesn't go on for that long, and is at least a partially interesting boss fight. I did keep falling down this bottomless pit, and that sucked. However, this chapter is okay. I'm more worried about the next chapter. Oh, please don't make me play it. Oh, you're really gonna make me play it, aren't you, producer? Of course you are, you bastard. Bastard! Alright, so I need to get this off of my chest. Interloper is the absolute worst chapter in Half-Life. It's horrible! I had an absolutely dreadful time playing it. If you've ever heard anything bad about Interloper, it's probably true. I'd rather be a prisoner in the Stanford prison experiment than play Interloper. Yeah, I went that far. The only good thing about Interloper is that's the penultimate chapter of Half-Life, so you know you're almost at the end. But just like Surface Tension, this chapter goes on for far too long. I didn't complain about this as much when talking about Surface Tension. The main reason is because Surface Tension is actually good and fun to play through, even though it's really hard. Interloper is not really that hard, except for 2 sections, and these 2 sections ruin the entirety of Interloper. The first section is when you go up this tower and have to fight far too many alien controllers, and the second section is the final part of Interloper. There are far too enemies and the lifts spin, and I slowly lose my sanity when playing this. Another thing is that some of the lifts don't go down until they feel like it. I think this has something to do with the amount of alien controllers on the screen, but definitely don't quote me on that. I swear, they just come down when they feel like it. Finally, after getting to the top of the spinning lifts of bullshit, Gordon finally gets to fight the big baby itself, the Nihilith. After being taunted by the Nihilith throughout the other chapters, and after making me suffer through Interloper, I'm ready to blast this fucking baby back to its Combine Masters. Oh, did I mention spoilers? To fight the Nihilith, Gordon must destroy his crystals. Then just shoot it until its brain opens up, then shoot that with explosives, and then it dies. During all of that, avoid the Nihilith's purple projectile attacks, which are an instant kill on hard. Also try to get behind a wall when it shoots the green one, so you don't get teleported into an area, and then have to do zero gravity bullshit platforming. However, just know that if the green projectile attack touches a wall, it spawns an enemy, so you might want to take care of them pretty fast. Oh, what the fuck? I got stuck in the wall? Oh, that's just great. Get me stuck and then make me fall and suffer. Ugh. Fuck Half-Life. At this point, I'm agitated and very pissed off. All I want to do is just end the game, but the goddamn Nihilith won't open up his goddamn brain. However, once he does that, and after shooting him for like 2 minutes, I finally give him some food for thought. So he dies, and then we finally get to meet the mysterious G-Man.
Gordon Freeman in the flesh. Or rather, in the hazard suit. I took the liberty of relieving you of your weapons. Most of them were government property. As for the suit, I think you've earned it. The border world, then, is in our control for the time being, thanks to you. Quite a nasty piece of work you managed over there. I am impressed. That's why I'm here, Mr. Freeman. I have recommended your services to my employers. And they have authorized me to offer you a job. They agree with me that you have limitless potential. You've proved yourself a decisive man, so I don't expect you'll have any trouble deciding what to do. If you're interested, just step into the portal, and I will take that as a yes. Otherwise, well, I can offer you a battle you have no chance of winning. Rather an anticlimax after what you've just survived. Time to choose. It's time to choose. Looks like we won't be working together. No regrets, Mr. Freeman. Freeman, you fool!
Half-Life is a really, really good game. In conclusion, I'd probably give this game a 9 out of 10. It's very, very good. It has great set pieces, great action, and overall, a great story. It's a very influential game in first-person shooters, and it will continue its influence probably into the future. I like to see what happens with the Half-Life series now that Half-Life Alyx has come out. Will Valve continue making great Half-Life games? Who knows? But next time I'll be talking about Kirby's Adventure, the second in the Kirby series. Hope I do it more justice than I did with Kirby's Dream Land. Oh, Kirby's Dream Land. That was a bad review. Bad review.